So today I want to talk about how to take massive action and stop making excuses. Obviously, step one we've talked about is to get really clear on what we want and to know what the outcome of that situation is. So like I hear people all the time, they're like, I want to lose weight, right? Losing weight is not a clear outcome, right? Because if tomorrow I lost 1 pound, I could lose 1 pound tomorrow by being dehydrated, right? So we have to make sure that it's specific, measurable, and actionable. So I could say something like, I want to lose 8 pounds by eating one meal and a tasting and walking 7 days a week by February 28th. That would be a clear, specific, measurable, and actionable goal, right? So I'm really excited. I just finished writing my book called One Meal and a Tasting, and you can actually pre-order it at chantelrayway.com/onemeal if you've ever thought about doing that. But step 2 is to follow and ask yourself, is what I'm doing working or not, right? So you might have made a goal and it was just completely like, maybe you said, I want to lose 20 pounds by the end of this month. Well, that's probably not reasonable, right? Maybe you said, I want to double my business by the end of this month. That may not be reasonable. So you have to ask yourself, is this reasonable, and be flexible enough to just keep tweaking them until we get the approach that we want. And then we can say, this is the result that I can go for. But step 3 is really where I want to start talking about step 3 and step 4, which step 3 is having positive associations versus negative associations. And I'm going to go over that in just a bit. And step 4 is to stop making excuses. So having a positive association is basically, let me give you an example. I have a good friend of mine. His name was Chris, and we used to joke him all the time. He was dating his wife for about 8 years. And we would literally say to him all the time, we'd say, Chris, land the plane. Like, land the plane, son. You've been dating her for 8 years. We all know she's amazing. Like, marry her. And so for her, being married created all this joy and happiness. But for him, the thought of being married just created all these negative associations. Like, he knew a lot of friends that were like, oh my gosh, I can't hang out with the guys anymore. He thought about, all these guys that had gotten divorced. They'd taken the wife took half the money. And so all he did was, in his mind, he associated the idea of getting married with such negativity. And she had all of these pleasures, right? Like, she was like, oh, it's going to be wonderful. I can have kids. I can feel secure. All the things that she had a positive association. Everything he had was a negative association. And so, in your mind, you have to look at, what are some things that I am associating with pain? Like, what if I double my business and it takes up all my time? Or what if I lose weight and all the guys are after me all the time? I don't know what it is for you, but you have to think about, what am I associating with this result? So if we want to change our lives, we have to have our positive associations, but just thinking positive is not enough. Okay, let me give you an example. I'm going to give you a commercial that I literally, 2 of them that I actually have not heard in over 10 years. I have not heard this. So if you can finish this sentence, I want you to type that in the chat. Now, I can't sing, so I'm just warning you. The best part of waking up, right, is Folgers in your cup, right? If I say, give me a break, break me off a piece of that, right? It's a Kit Kat bar. So again, I haven't heard either of these commercials in over 10 years, but I have associated that jingle with that brand so many times on a repetitive basis that now 10 years later, even though I haven't heard it, boom, I remember it. And so our positive associations are based on our daily habits over and over and over again. And so, for example, I wake up around anywhere from 4:30 to 5:30 every single day. So on Saturdays and Sundays, I still wake up really early because I've trained my body to go to bed early and wake up early. And when people say, oh, I'm just going to think positive, here's the thing. By the time you think about it, it's sometimes too late. So you have to already have trained your body in a certain way that every time something happens, you respond this way. Let me give you an example. I walk with a friend of mine. Her name is Kristen, and we walk several times a week. She actually happens to be a Christian counselor. But one of the things she taught me about is something called the automatic pause versus the automatic action. So, for example, she told me about she had gotten a new puppy. And she had Googled some different dog training techniques. And as she was browsing, she came upon this psychologist. His name is Evan Pavlov. And what he did was he discovered a way to create external associations with food. So, for example, he would ring a bell, and every time he rang the bell, he would give the dogs food. So eventually the dogs learned that if they heard the chime, they expected food. And so they would literally, even though there was food nowhere around, as soon as they heard that bell, you would see the dog drooling, right? And so an example of that, instead of the dog, would be, my friend Mitchell loves to eat when he's sitting and watching TV. So, in fact, he can't even sit in front of the TV without having pretzels or popcorn because he's literally conditioned himself to associating sitting on the couch and watching TV with needing a snack because he's done that for so long. He has to break the cycle. So now, every time he sits on the couch, he needs to pause, and he literally needs to say to himself, number one, I'm not truly hungry. Number two, he has to begin to associate hunger with only when his stomach's growling, when he really wants food. And he's got to almost just go, okay, I'm going to sit on the couch right now and I cannot have any food. And he's got to repetitively do that. If he wants the popcorn, he's got to do it somewhere else because he's got to break that habit of having that association with when he sits on the couch, now he has to have food. And, one of the habits I had to do was I literally had to just kind of quote Bible verses like Proverbs 23:2 says, put a knife to your throat if you're given into gluttony, right? One thing that I did when I was younger, I hate to clean. How many of you, some people like it. So if you like it, type it in the chat. I like to clean. But if you don't, type in there, no, I hate to clean. But if you're like me and you hate to cook or clean, one of the things I used to do when I was in my younger 20s, now I have two people that do all cleaning, all cooking. I just don't do it. I don't like it. Every once in a while, I like to be the main chef, but I like all my sous chef done, like all my chopping done for me. But when I was younger, what I would do is I hated to clean so much that I would develop a routine where on Saturday, that was my cleaning day. But sometimes what I would do is I would literally eat on Saturdays, and I would overeat to the point that I was so full that I couldn't clean. So to solve the problem, I would literally call a friend. I would keep her on the speakerphone as I cleaned, and I would have a friend come over and help me clean, and then I would swap and help clean her place. Sometimes I would go to the gym first and work out because it would give me energy to come home to clean. But I had to realize that on Saturdays, specifically when I knew I had to clean, I was sometimes self-sabotaging myself because I was eating because I didn't want to clean. If I don't want to clean, just don't clean, but don't overeat so that you get to that place. And that was like an excuse that I was making.